Welcome to Managing Camper Behavior, Strategies for Counselors. Let's take a moment to talk about why are we talking about this topic. As camp leaders, it's our goal to provide an environment and to send the message that camp is a warm and a safe environment for our campers. In order to do this, all of us as staff and camper counselors have to be prepared to deal with disruptive behavior. We've got to do that early and fairly and effectively. And as we know, children are relentless researchers. They will go out of their way to test and to test again, especially if our actions aren't in line with our words. Will you be challenged as a counselor by campers? More than likely, yes. At some point, that's going to happen. Campers may wonder, for example, how much authority do you really have as a counselor? Do you mean what you say? And are you really going to do anything about it if they don't follow the rules? An effective plan for managing behavior includes creating a positive environment, because that can help avoid a lot of behavior problems. Anticipating problems, we'll talk a little bit about that in one of our strategies. Teaching new skills and attitudes, because as we know, self-management is one of the big life skills that campers can work on at camp. And we'll talk about changing systems or the ways we do things as a way to help manage behavior. We need strategies that are tactical, meaning they bring about change through our skillful use of these strategies, and that also are practical, meaning they can be easily adapted or applied to our various situations at camp. What are our typical behavior problems at camp? Well, often they're not terribly complicated or difficult, but even things like non-compliance, meaning not asking what we need or not doing what we need campers to do. Sometimes disrespect is an example of a typical kind of behavior problem we might face. Disrespect of others or maybe even of counselors. And many other behavior problems would be under the category of aggression, picking fights, bullying, or just generally being nasty to others. Let's look at 5 strategies for managing behavior. Number 1, modeling. We teach children rules through our words and actions. Both teach a lesson, but only actions are concrete. Actions, not words, define our rules. For children, the best intervention and the best deterrent to any misbehavior is a good model. Role modeling cannot be underestimated. We likely don't think of this as a behavior management strategy, but it actually might be the most powerful one. Behavior, which is called normal by most, is behavior which follows predictable but often unspoken rules or norms. And where do we expect kids to learn these norms? Well, primarily from role models. Unfortunately, we're competing against some really negative role models in popular culture sometimes. In some cases, we know that kids don't even have great role models at home. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of examples at camp where role modeling by counselors sets the expectation and therefore manages the behavior of campers. Here's an example. Let's say the expectation is that when we walk to Vespers, we are quiet. How can we expect campers who maybe are far more excited about the campfire that's coming up later in the evening to meet this expectation? I hope you're thinking, we role model it. If we as counselors demonstrate and do this, most campers will try to follow our lead. Role modeling is so powerful that we can trace the roots of many behavior issues to it. Again, when campers are not behaving as expected, one of the first things we need to consider is, what are our actions telling them about what is expected? Sometimes our actions are speaking louder than our words. Number 2, pattern identification. The second strategy for managing behavior is called pattern identification. It means looking for recurring problems and figuring out the root cause. For example, what triggers inappropriate behavior? Is it a particular time or a particular place? And then we can look at how can these triggers be changed or eliminated or delayed or decreased. Then we can look at what changes in staffing or systems or the environment or timing could be made to get rid of these recurring behavior problems. Improvements can be made once information is gained from many sources, maybe even including the campers themselves. If we have a recurring behavior problem on some part or the part of many campers, it's definitely worth getting to the root cause of the situation and addressing it. Here's an example. At our camp, we used to have a problem with kids not staying to help clean up in the dining hall when it was their turn. This caused all kinds of problems. The kids who did stay were resentful. Cleanup took longer than it should have. Kids who didn't do the job got yelled at, etc., etc. So, we reorganized the system for choosing and assigning when each camper stayed to help. We allowed or assigned them to help with their friends as much as we could. This greatly improved the number of campers who remembered their cleanup shift and stayed to clean up. By identifying the pattern and changing the system, we were able to do away with most of the negativity surrounding the dining hall cleanup. Number 3 is advanced organizers. How do we use advanced organizers to help manage behavior? Advanced organizers might be called a prevention versus an intervention strategy. It's something that you do to ward off undesirable behaviors. Here's how it works. Before attempting an activity or a transition, review the steps with the campers. Ask them, what are your responsibilities, or what do you need to do? Review with them what it will look like or what it will sound like when they do these things. Then, campers attempt to initiate the desired behavior, and ideally then, counselors can tell them that they noticed. They can observe or give praise for that behavior that was accomplished. Let's look at an example. Let's imagine that on the first night of camp, the campers in your cabin were really hard to get to bed. You notice that this is happening for a number of reasons. Some campers make 4 trips back and forth from the restroom because they forgot things. Some campers spend 30 minutes looking for their pajamas. Another camper goes next door to visit a friend and doesn't return for 20 minutes. So, what can you do to make night number 2 go better? Let's imagine you deploy the advanced organizer strategy. In the break time following supper, you summon a cabin meeting. You say, okay, campers, tonight we are going to be getting back to the cabin even later than last night. In order to get to bed by taps, we are all going to get organized now. I want each of you to lay out on your bunk what you will need to shower and get ready for bed. For example, your pajamas, your toothbrush, your towel, your shower kit, your shower shoes, whatever. I want to see that each of you have everything ready, so as soon as we return later tonight, you can immediately get showered and get ready for bed. After saying this, then you role model by doing for yourself what you've just asked them to do. Then you supervise as needed for younger campers to get this task accomplished. When campers arrive back to their cabin after the evening activity, they will immediately be reminded of what they're supposed to do first when they see their items laid out, and you can support and encourage them as needed. There are a lot of examples of times at camp when you could influence behavior in a positive way by using this advanced organizer strategy. Strategy number 4, 3 alternatives to no. For some campers, the word no is like a cape to a bull. Let's review some words that you can use instead of no. For example, you could try yes later on or yes when. In other words, you're giving a qualifier or a condition that has to be met before you could say yes entirely. You might consider what part of their request you could say yes to if you couldn't say yes to the entire request. Another alternative would be to say, give me a minute, or let me think about it. This is a delay technique, of course. It gives you time to consider their request. A third alternative would be to say, convince me. By using this response, you're really asking campers for more information, and you're determining just how important the request is to them based on the information that they give you. Working to try to get the word no out of your vocabulary as an automatic response will help you build a better relationship with an environment for your campers. Number 5, broken record. There are times at camp when we absolutely must require an action or behavior by a camper. The example I've laid out here is going to the nurse's cabin for medication. These examples would almost always be health or safety related, likely. So let's take a look at this example of how to use the broken record strategy as a behavior management strategy. When a certain action or behavior is required of a camper, you would state it. For example, in this case, you must go to the nurse's cabin to take your medicine. Oftentimes, a camper is going to plead or whine. That's con number 1, begging, whining. And so, using this strategy, you repeat your statement. You must go to the nurse's cabin to take your medicine. Sometimes the camper is going to get angry or use maybe bad language. That's con number 2. So again, broken record strategy, you repeat your statement. If it still doesn't work, the camper may escalate again to pouting, or con number 3, sulking. Again, you repeat your statement in a calm voice. You must go to the nurse's cabin to take your medicine. Eventually, most likely, the camper's going to begrudgingly head to the nurse's cabin. And ideally, then you would respond, I knew you'd do the right thing, or a simple thank you for doing the right thing, for doing what you needed to do. Ideally, the next day, the camper will realize that maybe this battle isn't worth fighting because you're likely to employ the broken record strategy again. In summary, I've shared 5 strategies for managing camper behavior. Number 1, modeling. Role modeling is a powerful behavior management tool in nearly all that we do at camp. Number 2, pattern identification, which means figuring out what the root cause of a camper's behavior difficulty is and making changes to try to fix it. Number 3, advanced organizers, being proactive or preemptive to help campers achieve the desired behavior. Number 4, 3 alternatives to no. I gave alternatives so that you can get the word no out of your vocabulary as much as you can. And number 5, broken records. There will be a few situations where you may have to use the broken record strategy of repeating yourself to compel a camper toward the necessary behavior. I hope you'll be able to use these strategies to create a safe and fun atmosphere for your campers. Let's have a great year at camp.